Hi guys, I'm Kristen, welcome back to my channel. It is finally July and that means it is time to talk about my radar reads for the summer season. Now my radar reads videos originally started out as just like, here's a bunch of books that are on my radar, and they have slowly over time morphed into more of a seasonal TBR because I don't really follow a monthly TBR. There's just no way that I could do it. I have tried. In these videos, I compile a bunch of books that have been on my mind recently, ones that I've been constantly hearing about and keep thinking like, oh yeah, I really want to pick that up, along with some obligations that I have, some buddy reads, some read-alongs or readathons, and my like priority series starts and continuations, as well as the new releases that are coming out in this season that I would really like to pick up. Minor housekeeping note that I don't think actually affects you in any way, but I might as well share it. So I did start this being a like seasonal TBR in January, so it just made sense to do like January, February, March, April, May, June. But you know what? I'm kind of one of those like weird sticklers to the fact that like July, October, September doesn't really feel like summer to me. Like summer to me is June, July, August. So I'm gonna put a little bit of a wrench here, and I'm just going to do like officially now this is the radar reads for July and August, my summer, and then starting September I'm gonna do like that off-kilter, doesn't work perfectly with the calendar year, but very clearly September, October, November is fall, so it'll be like 3 months again starting in September when I do the fall radar reads. Again, I don't think this affects your life in any way, but it does mean that the new releases that I'm talking about today are only going to be from July and August. Okay, so without further ado, I've got a ton of books to talk about today. I'm gonna try to say very little about each one so that we can get through this. I'm actually really excited about a lot of the books that are on this radar reads, so I'm hoping that that means like better, more favorite things in the second half of the year. The first half of the year has not been going all that well for me. Like it's been going fine, just not like, yay, new favorites. So I have broken this down into sections, the first one of which is going to be like standalones or new series starts. So the first one in this list is, I believe, a standalone, and that is Mrs. Death by Selena Godin. And this is a book that was not on my radar at all. I had never heard about it before, but then suddenly, I don't know, sometime in the spring, like a bunch of channels that I followed really randomly, really sporadically started to mention this book and how like interesting and different and just how much they loved it. So it suddenly caught my eye. It is basically following a personification of death. I don't think there's like a straightforward chronological, what's it called, narrative here. I think that it is like poems and snippets and just like musings by this personification of death. The writing that I read in the sample was very different, very weird. It had like a, I don't remember if it was called a foreword or if it was a prologue or if it was like a of note, but it was really long and it was like what will and won't be in this book. And it was so different and interesting. I've heard that the book is just so fresh and unique and different. And honestly, those are the things that often really work for me, especially in a time when I'm feeling like nothing is really working for me. As I said, the sample was really weird, but like maybe good weird? We shall see. At the very beginning of July, I'm going to be doing a buddy read with Yolene from the channel Yolene Reads, and we're going to be reading Summers at Castle Auburn by Sharon Shin. Now, this is a book that I have kind of thought about picking up many times. If you look for like authors that you should read, if you like Juliette Marillier, Sharon Shin often comes up, and Summers at Castle Auburn is usually the one that's like most often compared to it. That being said, I know nothing about this book, but I saw that Yolene was planning to read it in one of her like seasonal TBRs or coming up soon sort of thing. And so we talked about doing a buddy read for this because we are both big Juliette Marillier fans. All the synopsis on Goodreads says is, as a child, Coriel Halsing spent many glorious summers at Castle Auburn with her half-sister and fell in love with a handsome prince who could never be hers. But now that she is a young woman, she begins to see the dark side of this magical place. That's it. It's got a 4.04 on Goodreads. Whew, it's one. Okay, then we have Paladin's Grace by T. Kingfisher. This is the beginning of a fantasy series by Kingfisher called Saint of Steel. Now, you have probably heard me mention in the past couple of videos that in July, I'm going to be one of the team captains for the Kingfisher Readathon is a 10-day readathon taking place over on my good friend Sarah's channel, Bright and Bookish. Myself and Kate from the channel, Kate Coy, are going to be co-hosts and team captains. So I'm not going to get into all of the Kingfisher books that I'm going to be reading for that readathon. I'm just going to include the 2 that were already on my radar reads, and then I'm going to do a separate Kingfisher readathon TBR video later, closer to the readathon. But if you want more details, I will link the announcement video down below, along with the Discord where we will be chatting throughout the readathon. But anyway, Paladin's Grace has actually been on my radar for a while already, because first my friend Spencer read it, and then he got my friend Taylor to read it, and I think that she went off on like a Kingfisher binge after that and strongly recommended reading Paladin's Grace. The only thing that I know about it is that we are following a paladin, and I think that's it. Is that all I know? No, wait. And also Taylor said that it is fantasy romance with elements of horror, and I'm assuming humor because it's Kingfisher. It's the start of a series. It works for one of the series prompts for the Kingfisher readathon. But anyway, looking forward to getting this. It is on Scribd, so I'm going to be listening to the audiobook, I believe, on Scribd. Also on my radar is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I had my eye on this. I feel like the cover, I just like automatically was like, ooh, I feel like this is going to be like whimsical and foresty and vibes, and I think that that's pretty much what it is, so good job on the cover artist there. I'm getting seaside, folklore, enchanted kind of vibes. I believe there's some Scottish influence here. I think that it might read a little bit on the historical fiction feel, if not actually being set in our world. I think the plot is following a mystery with girls going missing, and our main character, or one of our main characters, who is a bard who is called back to the island where he grew up, and he has to use his bard ways, or like music slash, I don't know, bardness. The unique set of skills that he brings as a bard are apparently essential to solving the mystery of these girls going missing. It has like I said, like I feel like the setup and the feel is going to give me a particular vibe that I have not been able to successfully find in a lot of other things. Like I'm already feeling like kind of Julia Marillier vibes, but we'll see. Anyway, it is the start of a duology, which is always interesting. A duology is a fun arc, an interesting arc that is amazing when it's done well, and I enjoy a good duology. So looking forward to getting to this. Then we have The Throne of the Five Winds by S.C. Emmett. This book came to my attention when I was preparing or getting ready for my assassin-based readathon, Assassins in April, back in April, where someone recommended this book. Unfortunately, it was recommended like just a little bit too late to make it into my recommendations video that I made. But when I looked it up on Goodreads, the like readers also enjoyed section featured both The Mask of Mirrors and The Liar's Knot, and that kind of felt like worth looking more into. This is the first book in the Hostage of Empire series. It is Asian-inspired fantasy set in the Emperor's Palace, full of ambitious royals, sly gossip, and unforeseen perils. Apparently an abundance, a like overwhelming amount of assassins or like assassination attempts. From the reviews that I read, it sounds like this is political intrigue heavy, very character driven, but possibly like a little bit thick and slower on the plot kind of spectrum. But I do love me a character-driven political intrigue fantasy. So this sounds very interesting. I would also, if possible, like to get my hands on The Final Strife by Sarah El Arifi. This is a new release in 2022. I have been hearing like not a ton of things. I know a lot of people who have their eye on it, but of the people who I've seen who have read it, they are people whose, I think, like reading tastes are very similar to mine and have absolutely loved it and raved about it. So I would really like to get to this. So basically this is the first book in a new fantasy trilogy. It has influence set in the mythology of Africa and Arabia. And I believe we are following 3 women, each of the different caste systems, or like the different 3 colors of blood, which is red, blue, and clear, I think. And they band together to overcome a cruel empire that is dividing people based on the color of their blood. I've heard that there's some LGBTQ rep, but I don't know what it is. And I've also heard that one of the POVs is also physical disability rep. So that is awesome if you're looking for both of those representations in your fantasy works. Maybe this is one to check out. Almost done with these series starts or standalones. Now I just have the 2 books from my priority series list for the year that I would like to get to in July and August. The first of which is Malice by John Gwynne, which is not unfamiliar in my radar reads or TBR videos. I have had this book on my eye for like the last year and a half. But it is one of my priority series starts, and a bunch of my friends who have been doing the Lady Trying to Read Along, we all sort of kind of had our eye on Malice at about the same time. I think Kristen from Kristen Craves Books got a copy for her birthday, so we were all like, hey, I've also had my eye on that, let's all read it together. So we are going to be buddy reading Malice together in July. I have heard that it's not John Gwynn's best work. It was in fact his debut, I believe. I've heard that Malice is like a little bit difficult to get through. I personally have picked it up already, but I was listening to the audio and I would just say it was like too many introductions of people and names and titles and historical names and historical events and things like that for it to be like a successful audiobook for me. So no problem, I'm just gonna get a ebook library copy instead. Again, like I've heard, like Malice is not the best book in that series, but once you get into the series, it does get a lot better with each of his subsequent books. So I'm prepared to read at least 2 books in that series, as I have said before. We'll see. But that is the plan for July. And then I would also like to pick up finally the 5th season, which is another of my priority series starts for the year. And that is by N.K. Jemisin, of course. I'm sure you don't need any introduction, but I believe this is in a world where every so often there is a 5th season that has a bunch of natural disasters, I think. And that's all I know about it. This will be my first N.K. Jemisin book, so I'm really excited to see what her writing is like because everyone raves about it. Okay, that is it for my series starts. Now let's talk about the series continuation books that I have my eye on, the first of which is The Splintered King by Mike Brooks. Yes. This is book 2 in the God King Chronicles, the first book of which was The Black Coast. I know that the third and final book in this trilogy is coming out in June, and I read the first book in April, and I think at the time I was like, I'm gonna read The Splintered King in May, and then I'll read the new release when it comes out in June. That obviously did not happen, but I would still like to keep reading through this series. It was one of my series, like my priority series for the year. Now, I have heard from Maria from Tea Books Magic, who got me into this series, that the second book did not work as well for her, and that it felt a little bit like Middlebrook syndrome, so at least I know that going into it. And this is of course that like culture differences series where these two cultures have historically, or one has historically raided the other one. They stopped for like 15 years, and now when they show up on the coast, they are not looking to raid them, they are actually looking to settle there. I am hoping to be won over by like a coupling that happened towards the end, which I was not super in love with, but I think I wasn't in love with it simply because it wasn't the one that I predicted. Then I am also going to be continuing with the Bridge Kingdom series. Now I read the first 2, The Bridge Kingdom and The Traitor Queen, last year, loved them. I don't think I was aware how much I loved them in the moment, which is an odd thing to say, but I feel like consistently those are the only fantasy romance books that I can point to and be like, yeah, Danielle L. Jensen nailed both the romance and the fantasy plot. And that is turning out to be something that I cannot find outside of these books in any other fantasy romance series, but I am looking. And the first 2 books followed the stories of Lara and Aaron. This is a world with a few different cultures, and the one culture, the Bridge Kingdom specifically, kind of has this like monopoly on the transport of trade because of this huge overarching bridge that they control. I'm not gonna get into it. But basically where we left off at the end of those 2 books, there was still stuff going on politically within the world, but it's sort of like Lara and Aaron's stories were at a close. And in the second book, The Traitor Queen, we met one of Lara's brothers, as well as a princess from one of the other cultures. There was definitely like, you could see that there was like plot happening off page with those 2. So The Inadequate Heir is the next book in this series, and we are now following those 2 people. Apparently in this book we are sort of getting like a similar time frame of, if not the first 2 books, at least the second book, like the stuff that was clearly happening off page during The Traitor Queen, and then continuing on with their story. And I think we're getting at least 1 more book, if not a 5th. We're definitely getting at least 4. The steam level is actually pretty minimal in The Bridge Kingdom, which she said at the time that she wrote it, it was like a lot of steam for what was common at that time. So this one has been accordingly spiced up for the current trends. So that's actually, I think, one of the only complaints that I had about The Bridge Kingdom. So looking forward to this so much. And then along with my continuation series, I will be continuing on in the Tawny Man. I'm not sure what that will include. I'm reading the first book, Fool's Errand, currently with Maria, and then going on from there. I think the next book is Golden Fool, so I don't know if I'll read both Golden Fool and the third book, whichever what that one is in Tawny Man, or just Golden Fool. I think Maria and I are having very different levels of interest and enjoyment in this, well, in all of the realm of the Elderlings, so I might be a little bit more likely to want to binge through the Tawny Man series compared to Maria, so we're just gonna have to play that by ear and decide that accordingly. Okay, before I get into the new releases, I will talk about my romance TBR. So I always have or I try to have a couple romance books in my back pocket for when I'm in the mood for that. Now, I had 3 on this list, but I've actually, since making this list, read one of them, and that was Every Summer After by Carly Fortune, which is maybe good that I've already read it, because 2 of the 3 romances that I did have written down were like the exact same trope, which is like childhood friends to lovers to some sort of traumatic breakup and distance spanning several years to then like getting back together again, which, to be honest, is a trope or romance setup that I will always read. So like I wasn't that upset about the fact that they were like basically exactly the same. So I won't be talking about Every Summer After now, but the other book here then, which is the same trope, is The Infinity Between Us by N.S. Perkins. I believe Maria from Tea Books Magic told me about this. So this is childhood family friends who cottage together. And I think in this case, it's actually something happens between the 2 families that leads them to to discontinuing cottaging together every year. They have to see each other again years later. You know, it's this setup. It's Love in Other Words. It's The Summer I Turned Pretty, which I actually haven't read. It is Every Summer After. I'm sure there are others if you know of some. Hit me up. This is a trope that I love. And it just sounds like a really great summer romance read. I really like the cottage element. That's something that is like really near and dear to my heart. And it was chock full in Every Summer After, so I'm looking forward to hopefully getting lots of cottage core kind of summery cottage-ness in the vibes for The Infinity Between Us. And the other romance book that I have on my romance TBR is A Scoundrel of Her Own by Stacey Reid. This is a historical romance, which I feel like I haven't read in aeons, but really just like several months. And it is the 3rd book in the Sinful Wallflower series, the 2nd book of which, Her Wicked Marquess, is my absolute favorite historical romance. Seriously, if you read historical romance, you have to read Her Wicked Marquess. But this is a series following a group of girls who are all designated like wallflowers within the ton, and they all do something like scandalous in order to have their romance story. In this one, we are following Ophelia, who is the daughter of a marquess, moonlighting as a singer in the seedy underworld of London, where I think she stumbles into some of her father's secrets, and that requires her to get some sort of help from the dangerous and ruthless scoundrel Devlin, like the owner of the club where she sings. I think it's gonna be a smutty historical good time. Okay, now we are going to get into all of the new releases that are, not all of the new releases, but the top new releases that I have my eye on coming out in July and August. All 3 of the ones that I have in July are all coming out on July 26th, so I'm not going to repeat that every single time, just July 26th. Keep an eye out for Violet Made of Thorns by Gina Chen. Now this is a dark, quirky YA following Violet, who is the prophet to a king and occasional liar. It seems like for fun, sometimes she just makes up the prophecies. And she influences the court through her not always true divinations. But when the king asks her to falsely prophesy something about the prince's love life, she accidentally awakens a curse. Now I think there is definitely some like angry, sexy tension between Violet and this prince from what I've heard. Unsurprisingly, the comps here are The Cruel Prince and Serpent and Dove. I haven't read Serpent and Dove, but love The Cruel Prince, love that like hate you, angry, sexy, tension vibes. Now, I haven't been in the mood for YA lately, but I do really like the sound of this one. So like, I think if I'm in the right mood for it, this will be a good, fun read. Now, the advanced reviews for this do seem pretty solid. However, I did notice a trend saying not to take the comparison to Cruel Prince like too intensely, that if you like really hold it up against that one, you might be a little bit disappointed. So fair enough. I've been warned going into it, still looking forward to it. Then we have Book of Gothel by Mary McMine. This is a debut fairy tale retelling of Rapunzel, but told from the perspective of the witch who locks her in the tower. This is definitely part of an ongoing trend of fleshing out the backstories and motivations of previously villainized women in fairy tales. Now, I haven't read all of those, but I'm always up for a good villain backstory if it's done really well. Now, Judith from the channel Dead Good Book Reviews did say that this didn't necessarily bring anything new to the table, but admittedly, I have a hard time passing up fairy tale retellings. I am always on the hunt for good fairy tale retellings. I feel like they bring a particular vibe that, even if not new, are at least consistent. And then finally, the last one coming out on July 26th that I'm looking forward to is A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Foz Meadows. I am really excited about this one. It is a male-male fantasy, romance, political marriage. Need I say more? Philasson is unhappily betrothed to a girl from another land for an important political alliance, but when his preference for men is accidentally discovered, he fears complete ruination. That is until, of course, the family of his betrothed simply offer an alliance or a marriage with their son instead. Now, if the two dislike each other at first and are like forced to work together and begrudgingly realize all the great things about each other, this book will officially have all of the ingredients for a perfect fantasy romance for me. And fingers crossed that it works both in the romance and fantasy plot parts for me. Now, one final note, if you are interested, I've heard that there are definitely some content or trigger warnings that you should look up for that. So if you're interested, make sure to check that out. And then going into August, on August 9th, we have Fury Song by Rosaria Munda, the third and final book in the Aurelian trilogy. I am so excited and terrified. I honestly don't know if my heart can take reading another one of these books, but I also couldn't live with myself if I didn't finish these series. So I'm kind of stuck in a little bit of a hard spot there. I have heard from advanced reviewers that it really sticks the landing, and I am both excited and terrified and can't wait-ness for this to happen. This is, of course, the Russian Revolution-esque with dragons story. It is a YA fantasy, but I think that it absolutely has enough like grit and governmental political exploration there that adult readers will absolutely love this. And in the first book, we follow Annie and Lee, who are two orphans from a revolutionary war who meet in an orphanage, but both from very different backgrounds, and they have grown up to be dragon riders for the new political government. I think everyone calls this like political, and it absolutely is, but it's not like political in like the schemy, manipulative way that we always think of political. It's more like actual politics and like government and policy and seeing the complications and the difficultness there, and like, can a new revolutionary government really be better than what came before it, or what are the failings of this new government, where are the kinks, that sort of thing, but with dragons. And then coming out on August 23rd, we have The Undertaking of Heart and Mercy by Megan Bannon. First things first, I've seen some reviews that say this gives Studio Ghibli vibes, so there's that. Now, the synopsis doesn't give much away about the world or even about the plot. We are introduced to Hart, who is a marshal, and he is responsible for patrolling the strange and magical lands of this place. I've heard it kind of compared to like the Wild West. And it is a lonely job that always has him bickering with a local undertaker named Mercy. And obviously with some like antics here, the two accidentally become pen pals, anonymous pen pals, and begin writing to each other and like, I think becoming like very good friends via these pen pals or via these letters, despite the fact that the two like really hate each other in real life. Some of the keywords that I grabbed from some of the advanced reviews were things like quirky, whimsical, cozy, steampunky western, which is not a vibe that I would normally gravitate to, but I'm actually like super peaked, grumpy sunshine, and zombies. Seriously guys, the advanced reviews for this are amazing. Now you might have noticed that a lot of the books on my list today or on my radar have quite a bit of romance in them. I would say that like I'm leaning in that way right now. Like, great book with a good romantic subplot is generally something that does really work for me. So I'm kind of steering my radar reads a little bit more in that direction than usual, or like a higher proportion than usual, and I'm hoping that it works out for me. Now those are a bunch of books that are on my radar for this summer. Obviously there are going to be some other books that I get to, and some of these I won't be able to get to, but I do my best with using this as like a priority guide. And obviously I'm also going to be participating in the Kingfisher Readathon. Again, check the link down below with the announcement video and all of the details. So I'm going to release a separate video with all of the Kingfisher specific books that I'm going to be trying to read for that readathon. That is it for me today. What do you have on your radar? What are some books you keep hearing about that you just want to pick up sooner than later? I'd love to hear about it. If you've read any of the books that I've mentioned today, let me know what you think of them down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day. Bye.